in the sprawling, sun-drenched landscape of Phoenix, Arizona, where the heat was a constant, oppressive presence, Brenda Harris moved with a cool, deliberate grace. She was the founder and creative force behind Solstice Events, a high-end event planning company that catered to the city's elite. Her business wasn't just about planning parties. It was about crafting experiences, transforming sterile corporate galas into immersive theatrical productions, and turning lavish weddings into cinematic love stories. She was a master of illusion, a creator of perfect moments, yet her own life was a quiet, solitary affair. One sweltering afternoon, after a grueling meeting with a demanding client, Brenda found herself stranded outside a downtown hotel, her usual car service inexplicably delayed. Annoyed and impatient, she opened a rideshare app on her phone. A few minutes later, a pristine black sedan pulled up to the curb. The man who stepped out to open her door was not the typical rideshare driver. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a simple but well-fitting suit, his smile warm and genuine, his eyes holding a calm, steady intelligence. His name was Reginald. "Miss Harris?" he asked, his voice a smooth, pleasant baritone. Brenda was taken aback. "Yes. How did you know my name?" "I saw the name on the reservation, and I recognized you from your feature in Phoenix Business Journal last month. Congratulations on the award, by the way. Your work is truly inspiring." Brenda was impressed. The car was spotless, the air conditioning was a welcome relief, and the driver was not only professional but had done his homework. The ride to her office was a revelation. Reginald navigated the congested city streets with an effortless skill, his driving smooth and confident. He didn't pry or make awkward small talk. He simply created a serene, peaceful environment, a bubble of calm in her chaotic day. He seemed to anticipate her needs, adjusting the music to a soft, instrumental track, offering her a chilled bottle of water from a small cooler in the back. "You're very good at this," she said as they pulled up to her office building. "I believe that any job worth doing is worth doing with excellence," he replied, his smile unwavering. "It's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about the experience in between." That one sentence resonated with Brenda. It was her own business philosophy, reflected back at her from the most unexpected of places. She made a decision. She didn't want to leave her transportation to chance anymore. She wanted this experience, this driver, every time. "Reginald," she said, her voice firm, decisive, "I have a proposition for you. I'd like to hire you as my personal driver, full-time. Name your price." Reginald's smile widened, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "I'd be honored, Miss Harris. I think this could be the beginning of a very productive partnership." As Brenda walked into her office, she felt a sense of satisfaction, a feeling that she had just made a smart, strategic acquisition. She had no way of knowing that she hadn't just hired a driver. She had just opened the door to a man who would first build her up, then break her down. A man whose past was deeply, secretly entangled with the one person she trusted most in the world. The partnership had begun, but it was not the kind she had imagined. It was a partnership in deception, and she was the unwitting primary investor. Reginald became an indispensable part of Brenda's life, with a speed that was both seamless and slightly unsettling. He was more than a driver. He was a shadow, a confidant, a silent witness to her high-stakes world. He was always there, 10 minutes early, the car perfectly climate-controlled, her favorite coffee waiting in the cup holder. He knew the city shortcuts, the back entrances to exclusive venues, the precise timing needed to avoid the worst of the Phoenix traffic. His presence was a constant, calming force, a luxury she quickly found she couldn't live without. During their long drives across the Valley of the Sun, from Scottsdale to Paradise Valley, the professional barrier between them began to dissolve. Brenda, a woman who was notoriously private, found herself opening up to him. She talked about her business, the challenges of being a female entrepreneur in a male-dominated world, the loneliness that came with being at the top. Reginald was a masterful listener. He didn't offer unsolicited advice or empty platitudes. He simply listened, his eyes meeting hers in the rearview mirror, with a look of genuine empathy and understanding. He, in turn, shared his own story. He spoke of his dream of starting his own business, a luxury transportation service that would cater to the city's elite, offering the same level of personalized, high-end service that he provided to her. He had a business plan, a vision, but lacked the capital and the connections to make it a reality. "You have the vision, Reginald," Brenda told him one evening as they drove through the quiet, palm-lined streets of her neighborhood. "You have the drive, the professionalism. You just need a little help with the strategy and the funding." Brenda saw an opportunity, not just to help a man she had come to admire, but to invest in a business that she knew, with her instincts, would be a success. She began to mentor him, spending their drives dissecting his business plan, offering her expertise on marketing, branding, and client acquisition. She introduced him to her network of wealthy clients, her lawyers, her accountants. She co-signed a business loan, providing the capital he needed to purchase a fleet of luxury vehicles. She was building him up, molding him into a success story, her own personal Pygmalion project. As his business, Apex Rides, began to flourish, their relationship deepened. The drives became less about business and more about each other. They shared stories of their childhoods, their past heartbreaks, their dreams for the future. A powerful, undeniable chemistry was building between them, a magnetic pull that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. The line between employer and employee, mentor and mentee, was blurring into something far more intimate. Throughout this time, Brenda's anchor, her sounding board, was her best friend, a woman named Simone. They had been inseparable since kindergarten, a bond forged in childhood secrets and adolescent dreams. Simone was the one person who knew the real Brenda, the vulnerable woman behind the powerful CEO. They had a standing weekly dinner, a sacred ritual where they would dissect their lives over wine and expensive food. "So, this driver of yours," Simone said one night, a playful glint in her eye. "You talk about him a lot. Is there something more going on there?" Brenda felt a blush creep up her neck. "Don't be ridiculous. It's a business relationship. I'm helping him. That's all." "Brenda, I've known you for 30 years. I know that look. You're falling for him." Brenda sighed, a small smile playing on her lips. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to me," Simone said, her smile warm, reassuring. "Just be careful, B. You've worked so hard to build your life. Don't let some charming driver tear it all down." "He's not just some driver, Simone. He's different." "They always are," Simone said, her voice a little too sharp, a little too knowing. She took a sip of her wine, her eyes holding a shadow that Brenda, in her love-struck haze, failed to notice. It was the shadow of a shared past, a secret history that connected her to Reginald in a way Brenda could never imagine. Simone wasn't just watching her best friend fall in love. She was watching her fall into a carefully laid trap, a trap that she herself had helped to set. The transition from friendship to romance was as smooth and inevitable as one of Reginald's perfectly executed drives. It happened one night after a successful charity gala that Brenda had orchestrated. The adrenaline of the event was still coursing through her veins. Reginald had been by her side the entire night, not as a driver, but as a partner, seamlessly coordinating the transportation for her VIP guests, his presence a quiet testament to the success of the business she had helped him build. When he dropped her off at her sprawling, empty mansion, the silence of the house felt more profound than ever. She didn't want him to leave. She didn't want to be alone. "Reginald," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Stay. Have a drink with me." He looked at her, his eyes dark and intense in the dim light of the driveway. He didn't say a word. He simply put the car in park, got out, and followed her inside. That night, the last remaining barrier between them crumbled. They made love with a passion that was both tender and desperate, a collision of two lonely souls who had found a temporary solace in each other's arms. They were in love. Or so Brenda believed. Their relationship was a whirlwind of romance. Reginald was the perfect partner, attentive, supportive, and deeply romantic. He would surprise her with flowers, cook her dinner, leave her little notes of encouragement on days he knew she had a tough meeting. He was everything she had ever wanted, everything she had been missing in her life. As their love story blossomed, so did Reginald's business. Apex Rides was now the premier luxury transportation service in Phoenix, the go-to for celebrities, CEOs, and politicians. Reginald was no longer just a driver. He was a successful entrepreneur in his own right, a man of wealth and influence. He had moved out of his small apartment and into a sleek, modern condo in the Biltmore district, a testament to the new life Brenda had helped him create. Brenda was happier than she had ever been. She had a thriving business and a man she adored. She felt a sense of completeness, a deep, abiding joy that had been absent from her life for so long. She couldn't wait to share her happiness with Simone. "We're in love, Simone," Brenda gushed during their next dinner, her face glowing with a radiant happiness. "I know it's crazy, I know it's fast, but it's real. He's the one." Simone's smile was wide, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm so happy for you, B. You deserve to be happy." But her voice was flat, her enthusiasm forced. She seemed distracted, her gaze distant, her responses clipped. Brenda, wrapped in the warm cocoon of her new love, attributed it to stress at Simone's own job, or perhaps a touch of jealousy that their friendship was no longer the central focus of Brenda's life. What Brenda didn't see was the turmoil raging behind Simone's carefully constructed mask. Every gushing detail Brenda shared about her perfect romance with Reginald was a fresh twist of the knife. Because Simone knew the real Reginald. She knew the charming, attentive man Brenda was describing was a facade, a carefully crafted character designed for a specific purpose. She knew because she had been his previous audience. She had been the one to fall for his charm, his promises, his lies. And she had been the one he had discarded when a bigger, better opportunity came along. Years ago, before Brenda had become a multimillionaire, before Reginald was anything more than a struggling driver with ambitious dreams, he and Simone had had a brief, intense affair. He had been her secret, her escape from a boring relationship. He had promised her the world, then vanished without a trace, leaving her heartbroken and humiliated. And now, here he was, back in her life, not as her lover, but as the lover of her best friend. The man who had broken her heart was now the source of her best friend's greatest joy. Simone was trapped in an impossible position. If she told Brenda the truth, she would not only destroy her best friend's happiness, but she would also have to confess her own secret past, her own poor judgment. She would have to admit that she had been played by the same man. So she said nothing. She smiled, she nodded, she played the part of the supportive best friend, all the while a toxic cocktail of jealousy, resentment, and fear churned in her stomach. She was a silent accomplice in her best friend's betrayal, a secret keeper in a tragedy that was hurtling towards its inevitable, heartbreaking conclusion.
If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode.
The first sign that something was wrong was a flicker of unease, a tiny, dissonant note in the otherwise perfect symphony of Brenda's life. It was a text message she happened to see on Reginald's phone, which he had left on the kitchen counter. It was from a name she didn't recognize, a simple, innocuous message. "Thinking of you. Call me later." When she asked him about it, he was smooth, dismissive. "Oh, that's just an old friend from back home. A little needy. You know how it is." He smiled his charming smile, and Brenda, wanting to believe him, let it go. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to grow. She started to notice things. The way Reginald would sometimes go quiet, his eyes distant, a shadow passing over his face before he would quickly replace it with his usual warm smile. The way he would take calls in another room, his voice a low, hushed murmur. The way he was always a little too vague about his past, his stories polished and generic, lacking the messy, specific details of a real life. Then came the financial discrepancies. Brenda, a woman who could spot a rounding error in a multi-million-dollar budget from a mile away, started to notice irregularities in the Apex Rides accounts. There were large, unexplained cash withdrawals, vague invoices for consulting services from companies she had never heard of, payments to vendors for services that didn't seem to align with the company's operations. When she questioned Reginald, he was again smooth as silk. "Aggressive expansion, baby. You have to spend money to make money. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. You taught me, remember?" He would placate her with a kiss, with a romantic dinner, with a weekend getaway. He would make her feel cherished, adored, and foolish for ever doubting him. But the unease lingered, a cold knot in her stomach that wouldn't go away. She was a businesswoman. She trusted her instincts, and her instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Her suspicions began to bleed into her conversations with Simone. During their weekly dinners, Brenda would voice her concerns, her anxieties, her growing sense of dread. She expected sympathy, reassurance, the unwavering support of her best friend. Instead, she was met with a strange, defensive hostility. "Brenda, you're being paranoid," Simone would snap, her voice sharp. "You're a successful, powerful woman. You're not used to sharing control. You're just looking for problems where there are none. Give the man some space. Let him run his own business." "But the money, Simone, it doesn't add up." "It's his business, Brenda. You helped him start it. You didn't buy him. You need to let go. You're going to suffocate him, and you're going to lose him." The more Brenda pushed, the more Simone pulled away, her responses becoming more and more aggressive. She would change the subject, cut their dinners short, her usual warmth replaced by a brittle, impatient anger. Brenda was baffled. It felt like Simone was defending him, protecting him. It felt like her best friend was taking his side. One night, after a particularly tense dinner where Simone had all but accused Brenda of being a controlling neurotic, Brenda was driving home, her mind reeling. Why was Simone being so defensive of Reginald? Why was she so dismissive of Brenda's legitimate concerns? The pieces started to click into place, forming a picture that was so ugly, so monstrous, that she could barely bring herself to look at it. Simone's strange behavior, her initial too-sharp warning to be careful, her forced enthusiasm, her angry defense of Reginald, it didn't make sense, unless Simone knew something. Unless Simone was a part of it, Brenda felt a wave of nausea wash over her. It couldn't be. Not Simone, not her sister, her other half. But the suspicion, once it had taken root, was impossible to ignore. She was a woman who trusted her gut, and her gut was telling her that she was being betrayed, not just by the man she loved, but by the woman she trusted with her life. The perfect world she had built was beginning to feel like a house of cards, and a storm was coming to blow it all down. Brenda was not a woman who waited for the storm to hit. She was a woman who flew into the eye of it. The suspicion, once it had taken hold, was a poison, and she needed the antidote, the truth. She did what she did best. She hired a professional. She contacted a private investigator, the most discreet and expensive in the state, a man who specialized in unearthing the secrets of the rich and powerful. "I want to know everything," she told the investigator, her voice cold, steady, the voice of a CEO, not a heartbroken woman. "My partner, Reginald, and my best friend, Simone. I want to know their history. I want to know if they have one. I want to know where the money from his business is going. I want to know everything, and I want it yesterday." While the investigator went to work, Brenda played the part of the loving, trusting girlfriend. She smiled, she laughed, she went to romantic dinners. All the while, a silent, Screaming rage was building inside her. She watched Reginald, looking for the cracks in his perfect facade. She watched Simone, looking for the tells in her carefully constructed performance of friendship. She was an actress in her own tragedy, waiting for the final, devastating scene. The investigator's report landed on her desk a week later, a thick manila envelope that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She opened it with a trembling hand, and there it was, the truth. In black and white, in glossy, high-resolution photographs. There were the financial records, a clear, undeniable trail of money being funneled from Apex Rides into a series of shell corporations, and from there into a single bank account, an account belonging to Simone. And then there were the photos. Photos of Reginald and Simone. Not from the past, but from the present. Photos of them meeting in secret at a dimly lit bar. A photo of them kissing, a desperate, angry kiss, in the front seat of Simone's car. A photo of Reginald handing Simone a thick envelope of cash. But the most damning piece of evidence was a transcript of a phone call, recorded by the investigator. It was a call between Reginald and Simone, a call that laid their entire sordid history bare. "She's getting suspicious, Simone," Reginald's voice said, tight with anxiety. "She's asking about the money." "You need to handle her, Reggie." Simone's voice snapped back, cold and hard. "You need to keep her happy. We're too close. I've waited years for this. You owe me." "I owe you? I'm the one doing all the work. I'm the one who has to pretend to be in love with that lonely, pathetic woman. And I'm the one who fed you the information. I told you what she liked, what she wanted to hear, how to get under her skin. I'm the one who has to sit there and listen to her gush about you, about the man who broke my heart and left me with nothing. So yes, you owe me. You owe me for my silence. You owe me for my pain. Now, handle her and get me my money." Brenda read the transcript, the words blurring through a haze of tears. It was all there, the entire, monstrous betrayal. Simone, her best friend, her sister, had orchestrated the whole thing. She had used her knowledge of Brenda's deepest vulnerabilities to help Reginald, her ex-lover, seduce her. It wasn't just about the money. It was about revenge. Simone was punishing Brenda for her success, for her happiness, for having the life that Simone had always envied. And Reginald, he was just a pawn, a willing, greedy accomplice in a game of bitter, twisted revenge. Brenda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply sat there in the cold, silent emptiness of her office, a profound, soul-shattering heartbreak washing over her. The love, the friendship, the trust, it was all a lie, a carefully crafted illusion, and she, the master of illusion, had been the biggest fool of all. The pain was immense, a physical weight that threatened to crush her. But as the initial shock subsided, it was replaced by something else, a cold, hard, diamond-sharp clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you have nothing left to lose. The woman who had been betrayed was gone. In her place, a queen with a sword had risen. Brenda did not confront them. Not yet. A direct confrontation would be messy, emotional. It would give them the satisfaction of seeing her pain. She wouldn't give them that. She was an event planner. She knew how to set a stage, how to build suspense, how to deliver a show-stopping finale. And this would be her masterpiece. She spent the next 2 weeks meticulously planning their downfall, using the same skills she used to plan her most elaborate events. She was a general preparing for war, her grief and heartbreak channeled into a cold, focused rage. She gathered her evidence, consulted with her lawyers, and set her traps. First, she dealt with Reginald. She called him, her voice sweet, loving. "Reggie, darling, I have a surprise for you. I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. I want to celebrate you. I'm throwing a party in your honor, a launch party for Apex Rides. All of my most important clients will be there. It's going to be the event of the year. Reginald, arrogant and unsuspecting, was thrilled. A party in his honor, a chance to network with the city's elite. It was everything he had ever wanted. He had no idea he was the guest of honor at his own execution. Next, she dealt with Simone. She called her voice filled with a fake, tearful desperation. "Simone, I need you. I think you were right. I think I'm losing him. He's been so distant lately. I'm so scared. I need my best friend. Please, come to the party with me. I can't do it alone." Simone, believing her deception was still intact, agreed. She would be there, the supportive best friend, watching from the sidelines as her plan came to its glorious, profitable conclusion. She had no idea she was a co-headliner in a tragedy. The party was held at a stunning modern art gallery in Scottsdale, a venue known for its dramatic architecture and soaring ceilings. Brenda had spared no expense. The champagne flowed, the food was exquisite, the guest list was a who's who of Phoenix society. Reginald was in his element, charming, confident, the picture of a self-made man. Simone was by Brenda's side, her arm linked through hers, whispering words of encouragement, her face a perfect mask of concern. At the height of the evening, Brenda stepped onto the stage, a single spotlight illuminating her. She looked radiant, a goddess in a shimmering silver dress. She tapped the microphone, and a hush fell over the crowd. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I'm so glad you could all be here tonight to celebrate a truly remarkable success story, the story of Apex Rides and its brilliant founder, Reginald." She smiled, a warm, genuine smile, and gestured to Reginald, who beamed from the front of the crowd. Reginald is a man of vision, of passion, of excellence. He's a man who knows how to get what he wants, and he's a man who has taught me a very, very valuable lesson. She paused, letting the suspense build. He taught me that trust is a commodity, and that some people are very, very good at selling a counterfeit version of it. And then the show began. The large screens behind her, which had been displaying the Apex Rides logo, flickered to life. The first image that appeared was a bank statement. Simone's bank statement, showing the hundreds of thousands of dollars that had been funneled into her account from Reginald's shell corporations. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Simone's face went white. Reginald's smile froze on his face. "He also taught me," Brenda continued, her voice now laced with ice, "that some partnerships are built on a foundation of lies." The screens changed. Now they displayed the photos. The photos of Reginald and Simone kissing in her car. The photo of him handing her a thick envelope of cash. Simone looked like she was going to be sick. Reginald looked like he had been punched in the gut. "And finally," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper, "he taught me that the most devastating betrayals often come from the people you trust the most." The audio from the recorded phone call filled the room, the speakers carrying every single damning word. Reginald's arrogant dismissal of Brenda as a lonely, pathetic woman, Simone's cold, bitter demand for her money, for her revenge. The entire sordid, ugly truth laid bare for all to hear. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone stared, horrified, at the two people at the center of the storm. Reginald and Simone were frozen, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. They were exposed, humiliated, destroyed. Brenda looked at them, at the man she had loved, at the woman she had called her sister. She felt nothing, no pain, no anger, just a cold, empty satisfaction. She had taken their secret and turned it into a weapon. She had taken their betrayal and turned it into a public execution. She had planned the perfect event, and it was a masterpiece.
If you're enjoying this story, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next episode.
The fallout was swift and brutal. As the last damning words of the phone call echoed through the silent art gallery, the spell was broken. The crowd, which had been frozen in a state of shocked disbelief, erupted into a low murmur of whispers and accusations. Reginald and Simone stood in the center of the room, trapped in the harsh glare of the spotlight, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of horror and shame. They were like actors on a stage, their play a sudden, catastrophic failure, the audience turning on them with a vicious, unified contempt. Brenda didn't linger to watch the full extent of their humiliation. Her part was done. She had delivered the killing blow. With a final, dismissive glance at the wreckage of her former life, she turned and walked off the stage, her head held high, her silver dress shimmering as she disappeared into the shadows. She didn't look back. In the days that followed, the story of the Apex Rides launch party became the stuff of Phoenix legend. It was the talk of every boardroom, every country club, every high-end salon. The story was a wildfire, consuming the reputations of Reginald and Simone in its blaze. The media, catching the scent of a juicy scandal involving wealth, sex, and betrayal, descended like vultures. Reginald's business, Apex Rides, which had been built on a foundation of Brenda's money and connections, crumbled overnight. His wealthy clients, horrified by the public display of his treachery, canceled their contracts en masse. The bank, alerted to the fraudulent nature of his business dealings, called in his loans. He was facing a mountain of debt and a string of lawsuits from investors Brenda's lawyers had quietly contacted. He was ruined. The empire he had built on lies had been reduced to ashes. Simone's fate was no better. She was fired from her job, her professional reputation destroyed. She was ostracized from their social circle, her name a byword for jealousy and betrayal. The friends she had once gossiped with now gossiped about her, their whispers following her like a cloud of poison. She was alone, a pariah in the city she had once navigated with such confidence. The money she had extorted from Reginald was frozen in her accounts, tied up in legal battles that she had no hope of winning. She had gotten her revenge, but the price was her own soul. Brenda, meanwhile, retreated from the world. She sold her sprawling mansion in River Oaks, a place now tainted with the ghosts of her past. She took a step back from her business, handing over the day-to-day operations to her trusted second-in-command. She needed time to heal, to process the profound, double-edged wound of her betrayal. The pain was still there, a dull, constant ache in her chest, but it was no longer the all-consuming fire it had once been. It was a scar, a reminder of a battle she had fought and won. She spent her days in quiet solitude, walking through the serene landscapes of the desert botanical garden, finding a strange comfort in the stark, resilient beauty of the cacti. She read, she traveled, she reconnected with the woman she had been before the ambition, before the wealth, before the betrayal. She was rediscovering herself, piece by painful piece. One afternoon, months later, she was sitting at a small, quiet cafe, sketching in a notebook, when a man approached her table. He was handsome, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wasn't her type, not the powerful, ambitious men she had always been drawn to. He was a professor at the local university, a man of books and ideas. "Excuse me," he said, his voice soft. "I don't mean to bother you, but I have to say, your story is remarkable. What you did, it was a work of art." Brenda looked up, surprised. She had expected judgment, pity, not admiration. "It was a tragedy," she said, her voice quiet. "Every great work of art is," he replied, his smile warm. "May I join you?" Brenda hesitated for a moment, and then, for the first time in a long time, she smiled. A real, genuine smile. "I'd like that," she said. It wasn't a new beginning. It was something quieter, something more real. It was a conversation, a connection, a small, hopeful step into a future that was entirely her own. The illusion was shattered, but in its place, something real. something true, was beginning to grow. Grow. The ending for Reginald and Simone was not a dramatic, fiery explosion, but a slow, pathetic fizzle. They were left to drown in the mess they had created, their grand plans for a life of stolen luxury turning into a nightmare of legal bills and public shame. They turned on each other, of course, their partnership in crime dissolving into a toxic flurry of bitter accusations and mutual blame. Each saw the other as the sole architect of their downfall, their shared greed and ambition curdling into a deep, abiding hatred. Reginald, stripped of his business and his charm, became a ghost in the city he had once dreamed of conquering. He was forced to sell his sleek Biltmore condo, his luxury cars, his expensive watches, every trapping of the successful life he had so carefully constructed. He tried to start over, to find another wealthy woman to charm, another opportunity to exploit. But his name was poison. The story of his public humiliation had spread through the city's elite circles like a virus. No one would trust him. No one would hire him. He was a con artist who had been exposed, a magician whose tricks had been revealed. He ended up where he began, a rideshare driver. But this time, there was no ambition in his eyes, no charm in his smile. There was only the hollow, defeated look of a man who had flown too close to the sun and had been burned to a crisp. Simone's ending was, in many ways, even more tragic. She had not just lost her money and her reputation. She had lost her history. Her betrayal of Brenda was so profound, so personal, that it had retroactively erased the 30 years of friendship that had preceded it. She was completely, utterly alone. She moved out of Phoenix, unable to bear the whispers and the stares, and ended up in a small, anonymous town, working a menial job. Her life a pale, pathetic shadow of what it had once been. She had been driven by a bitter, corrosive envy, a desire to punish Brenda for her success. In the end, the only person she had truly punished was herself. Brenda, on the other hand, found a new kind of success, a quieter, more meaningful one. Her relationship with the professor, a man named David, blossomed. It was nothing like her relationship with Reginald. There were no grand romantic gestures, no whirlwind passions. It was a slow, steady burn, built on a foundation of shared ideas, mutual respect, and a gentle, easy companionship. With David, she didn't have to be a CEO, a powerhouse, a creator of illusions. She could just be Brenda. He loved her for her mind, for her resilience, for the scars that she bore with such grace. He was not intimidated by her strength. He was inspired by it. She eventually returned to her company, Solstice Events, but with a new perspective. She was no longer driven by a relentless, all-consuming ambition. She delegated more, trusted her team, and found a healthier balance between her work and her life. She used her wealth and influence not just to create beautiful parties, but to help other women, to fund scholarships for female entrepreneurs, to mentor young women who were just starting out. She had learned, in the most painful way possible, the importance of lifting other women up, not tearing them down. One day, about a year after the party, Brenda was having lunch with David at a small outdoor cafe. She was laughing, her face relaxed and happy, when she saw him. It was Reginald. He was driving a beat-up older model sedan, a rideshare sticker peeling in the back window. He pulled up to the curb to pick up a passenger. Their eyes met for a brief, fleeting moment across the street. There was no recognition in his eyes, no flicker of the past, just the dull, empty gaze of a stranger. And in that moment, Brenda felt nothing, no anger, no pity, no satisfaction, just a profound, quiet sense of peace. He was just a man, a ghost from a life that was no longer hers. She turned back to David, to the man who loved her for who she was, not for what she had. She took his hand, her smile genuine, her heart full. The betrayal had been a fire, a devastating blaze that had burned her life to the ground. But from the ashes, something stronger, something more beautiful, had grown. She had not just survived. She had been reborn.
Before you go, tap that like button, leave a comment to let us know what you think, and subscribe so you're always the first to hear our next story. Your support keeps these stories coming.